This is Louis Zumbaugh with RushHourAg. Leave your message after the tone.
Hey Louis, it's Elliot Henderson. Can't wait to tell you about
rolling down the back road, truth riding with the dust, talking agriculture policy with people you can trust. From the field to the Capitol, we're breaking it down. Real talk, real issues from a real farm town. Every hour's rush hour when the work won't leave, so we're cutting through the noise and setting things straight.
What's your rush today, Elliot?
All right. Welcome back, listeners, to another episode of the RushHourAg podcast. I'm your host, Elliot Henderson.
And I'm your host, Louis Zumbaugh. Once again, we've trying out our new makeshift podcast studio here at the farm in eastern Iowa. We've had a few technical difficulties with the few that we've tried having so far, so we're sharing a mic for this one. And
It's going to be more intimate.
it's going to be a more intimate setting. Woo-hoo!
Well,
Yeah.
I'm really excited about this guest today. It'd be our first two-time guest.
Yes, a repeat guest.
Yeah.
It's Representative Norlin Mommsen. He's back to tell us how the Indemnity Fund ended up. We're going to discuss if it was known then or known later, or if there's going to be a fix for the small elevators, maybe, or maybe it's just too late. And maybe you didn't even realize this, but we can talk about it when we get there. And then the big thing that we want to talk about, in fact, Norlin and I were talking about it on the phone, and I said, we got to quit this because it needs to be a podcast, is private property rights, because Norlin might actually help change my mind a little bit. So with that, Norlin, welcome back.
Hi there.
So
I'd be back.
we're glad to have you.
What are you working on today, Norman?
I cleaned cattle sheds this morning. How's that?
Yeah.
Get the slop out of them.
Do you have a lot of rain?
Huh?
Do you have a lot of rain?
Yeah, we had a lot of rain, and with the heat, they want to stay in them all the time. So
Yeah.
that's probably the main thing. So
Any damage?
nope, we didn't have any damage.
Okay.
So
Yeah, we had a little wind damage here as you walked in. The corner of the shed's gone, but we're getting that replaced. A lot of corn down. I got a neighbor's building site sitting on my field across the road. So that's always exciting to clean up somebody else's stuff. But nobody got hurt, so that's the
Nobody-
important thing.
no, we got a nice rain just east of us. They had like I'd heard 4 to 6 inches,
Yeah.
and
You got lucky.
got lucky. Yes.
There you go.
Yeah, we got 4 to 6 inches up where I'm from, and it was too much.
Yeah, like I think overall we got 2 somewhere in there, and over some time. So
Well, one thing with our podcast being fairly new, and Elliot and I are learning that by the time they air, a lot of things change. And so we had you on. It was a great podcast on the Grain Indemnity Fund. While session was going on, you thought possibly nothing was going to happen. And in the wee early morning or at some point, you got some movement. And tell us about how that ended up passing and being different than what it was.
well, it basically ended up being the House version. We made a couple tweaks so that the Senate could have their fingerprints on it, so that that's just part of the politics. But overall, it was the House bill, which I was pleased with because, like I said, I helped put most of the House bill together with conversations over last summer and meetings last summer, and I felt fairly good where we ended up with that, and that's what got passed.
So what were the tweaks?
Basically, we increased the payout. Like the max was 300,000. Do we go to 400,000 per incident or per
Okay.
claimant? Raise that some. To me, that wasn't a big deal because in conversations prior with the Department of Ag, they had never paid out 300,000 to anybody and never had maxed that out. So to raise it, I didn't feel was that big of a what do you want to say, liability to the account or to the fund. And then the other one in ours for not defer pay, but credit sales, we were paying out at 70%, and that got raised to 75%.
Okay.
So basically paying out a little more, but still, having some of us step back or deduction due to the credit sale.
I've had a few neighbors and podcast listeners that that's one of our technical difficulties is our lighting. But the boys at Farm for Profit offered to let us try out this equipment, and
Secondhand equipment.
yeah, And
Norlin's already giving us a hard time about being farmers here, trying to.
I'd have done the same thing. So let's go for it.
if you can get by with a 4455, why would you want to? What is the new number of a tractor?
Yeah.
And after all, 4455, in my opinion, is the best tractor John Deere ever made. So maybe we don't have the best microphones ever made, but we got what we got, and we're making it work, and we're excited.
These must be more like red. It's red microphones.
That could be, yeah. We're using some Alice Chalmers technology here or something. I don't know. Anyhow, we're gonna keep on going.
Yep.
So I had a couple people ask me, and we have 3 right in our neighborhood. A smaller volume elevator in Prayburg, one in Coggin, one in Center Point, that all gave up their grain dealer's license. And from what I understand, it has something to do with the indemnity fund because it's going to cost a lot more. Or did it have nothing to do with that, but somehow having a grain dealer's license is costing a lot more? Do you know anything about that?
Well, basically, and we talked about it when I was here before, that we were requiring an unqualified audit for anybody that had a grain dealer's license. So basically, right now there was 2 ways to get a grain dealer's license. One is an unqualified audit. And basically that's, you have a third party come in and do the counting and the measuring, and instead of you just putting it on a piece of paper and turning it in. And then the other way was you just put in your financials and then $100,000 bond.
Okay.
Well, $100,000 bond in today's world isn't much coverage at all whatsoever. So basically put everybody on the same page.
Okay.
And that was, in my mind, one of the ways to ensuring that there was the proper oversight of the grain business, to put that extra risk onto the fund. Because if you look at, you look at the amount of grain that's sold in Iowa, and even the amount, in credit sale or cash sale, the way the fund is set up, even under the new law, to have a maximum of $16 million, that's pennies on the dollar. So, the insurance business would laugh at us to go, we're going to put $16 million here to protect the grain sales in Iowa. I mean, it's just not, logical. So one of the ways that we felt the best way to keep the account down, because that money comes out of farmers' pockets. One of the ways to keep that as low as we could was to put as much integrity or safeguards within the system. And I've gotten multiple phone calls on that issue from grain dealers.
Okay.
Not very nice calls. Most of them. And a lot of misinformation out there to begin with.
Okay.
And first off, the rules have not been written yet on, and there was some fear, and some of the calls I had and some of the fears was if they had a license due here in July, the law took place the 1st of July, and if they had to have the unqualified audit and all this and that quickly, it wasn't going to happen. I mean, there just was not enough time, which we anticipated that, at least I feel we did, because if you read the bill, I'll go back, people need to read the bill. We gave the Department of Agriculture emergency rulemaking ability. So they can make the rules on how to transition from the present system to the new system.
Okay.
And they were not in place. They were not, I believe it was last week with the holiday, was 4th of July. Just recently, I will say, the department got a hold of me and we went through what they felt were the new rules. They had talked with them, with the Agribusiness Association, and then I believe the Association of Co-ops, and talked them over, and they told me just, that those 2 groups signed off on them. But basically, there had to be a year's transition from one to the other. So if you can't get somebody to come in and do an unqualified audit, because it takes a specialty company or a special CPA to do it. Not everybody does it, because somebody has to, like I said, come out, look, and account.
The cost is between 20 and 30,000, I was told.
I was told a lower amount.
Okay.
I mean, but whatever it is, like I said, I was given a,
Yep.
When I asked and inquired at the time of legislation, I had a lower number.
Okay.
But so now, like I said, the rules, at least they haven't even been published yet. But like I said, if someone's going, the the new law is going to put me out of business because I can't get my license in time. That's untrue because that stuff wasn't even available. I mean, what you said, the rules on how to do it or how it was going to happen hadn't taken place. So, I mean, sure, there would have been some concern that if, okay, you didn't allow for a transition, but I mean, in my conversation with the department, I kept telling them to be as lenient as you can during this transition period. And I think they have been and will be. And like I said, so I would ask people to just wait and see how the rules take place. But I know I got a phone call or some phone calls on people and concerning the, basically unqualified audit, they look at everything. Okay. Well, one gentleman, he had a grain hauling was just a business, was a small part of his business. And now it was an unqualified audit. They were going to look at it all. And I asked them, well, but do you put the assets that you're using elsewhere, different parts of your business, basically to justify your grain license? You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
He said, yes. So I'm like, then why shouldn't the department look at it and make sure they're there?
You're talking about that, like the $100,000 of equity or assets. Is that what you're talking about?
No. Oh, well, that's the old law. All you had to do was basically you had a CPA put your financials in your $100,000. Well, that process is gone. Everybody's got to do.
Now we're going to go, everything's going to be an unqualified audit.
Yeah.
Sorry.
But if you were, let's say, a fertilizer company and you did most of your business if you, when you picked up fertilizer, you hauled grain to a terminal, basically pick up some extra business, but then you also had a grain license in regards to that. Well, they would also now look at the fertilizer side because you're using that to justify your grain license.
Right.
And, people didn't understand why they should. Well, then to me, then create an LLC, create a different business. I mean,
okay. So
and
as long as
separate
it's
it off.
separate, that one.
Then separate it
I
off.
understand you now. Okay.
But if you're going to list that on your equity sheet as basically, yes, I have enough assets if I can't pay my bills or can't pay that check is bad, then why shouldn't, that's kind of my take on it. But like I said, I got multiple calls and one thing I think, I'm going to take you guys a place you don't want to go.
No, we'll go anywhere.
but
I'm not elected anywhere. You're the one that's got to be careful.
anymore, Louis. You don't want. But what I think the grain business or people need to look at, and they're not addressing, is you had one of the largest farm organizations in the state of Iowa as a proposal want more oversight or more coverage for their grain.
Sure.
So the grain dealers, customers are concerned about that transactions that take place between the elevator and the farmer. Because if there wasn't a concern there, why are those farmers going, we need that covered on the indemnity fund?
Well,
You ever think about that?
I thought it should have been. The only reason I changed my mind on the last episode, and you guys changed it, well, it had nothing to do with that part of what you're talking about. It had to do with the scooping of the money.
Right.
And that's why, okay, I understand this now because I wouldn't want the money scooped.
Oh, but
I have no problem wondering why if I do is deferred payment under this?
No, we aren't.
See, I think if you do deferred payment, you should still be covered. I know you two don't agree with me, and we don't need to spend 3 hours hashing out why we
need a much bigger fund. It's just that simple.
That's true. And that's the part.
That's just simple.
And that's the part that because of the scooping and the much bigger fund, that's why I changed my mind.
Yeah.
So I understand that part. But there again, you could use a large farm organization who shall remain nameless. If you were going to do an audit, you wouldn't audit their farm side. You'd audit you'd audit it as a whole because the other side is a lot bigger than the farm side of it.
Sure. I'm just looking at these numbers right now, and I've been in the business now for 2 or 3 years, and I'm thinking $20,000, $30,000 for my little operation of 500,000 bushels. I'm probably done. I'm probably not gonna do it no more.
And that's why the three that I talked about, they don't probably move enough volume anymore. But it is hard, and the reason that these people called me was just to let me know if I knew about it. But if you are a small acreage farmer yet, and you're still hauling your grain into the local elevator in your local small town, with your Cory box and your tractor, it is a big deal whether the little elevator in XYZ, in my case, Cog in Iowa, wouldn't be open. Now I got to go to the next town or two towns over. How many though? And you may not know this, Norlin, but how many grain dealers do you have? And I don't want to mention any names, but I know that there's one down between us here that I don't think they have a grain bin, but they do a lot of. They were a grain dealer's license and haul directly off the farm to the terminal.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
And that might be the one that's calling, and I don't want to.
Yeah. No, and in regards to the smaller guy, and one of the first, conversations I had with somebody was, would you be willing to look at it? I said, darn sure, no, I'm most definitely look at it. Oh,
If there's something you could do to help them stay in business.
I mean, my goal is not to put anybody out of business. My goal is to make sure that if there is a catastrophe, that that the money is there. And I think that'd been and I had multiple conversations with people because, when we talked about the deferred payment and stuff, put that in there. Well, in theory, if that had been included and there hadn't been enough money, then basically people would get it over years. Well, I think that would be an insult, or at least I would take it as an insult. Well, don't worry, you'll get your money someday. Then why don't you just hope, or
somebody never comes.
Right. And that's, so I, in my mind, I thought it was a greater disservice to my fellow farmers to basically promise something that wouldn't be there than just say, no, that's not covered. And we needed to cover it. So it's,
So how many folks have stepped down already, or how many entered?
I know three local to me here that are giving up their grain dealer's license, and one of them is partly because of age. The other two are probably heavily involved in the feed business, and so hauling grain down, so they can haul bean meal back or distillers back or whatever, was a side of what you're talking about. Was it trucking? Was it this? But I do know that in all three of the cases, they still have an active elevator in the fall that
So even
small farmers utilize.
But even in that feed setting, where they're taking an inventory of, it's probably going to be in a, what do they call it when they commingle that grain? But it's in a.
Well, in these cases, they were never
banking.
Yeah, like grain bank. Yeah. So are there going to be no coverage for when they step away from their dealer license?
These guys
grain banking. Can they still do that?
These guys weren't doing that that I'm talking about. They were picking up on the farm, taking it down. You take load beans on the Cargill, you hop in the bean meal line and haul.
Mostly a trucking operation, not something.
Basically, if their goal is to get it on the truck, I don't know how it is in your area, but my area, I've got ADM in Clinton there.
Sure.
I can either sell directly to ADM, or I can sell it to my elevator. And then they contract with ADM, and I can get whatever trucker I want to haul it to ADM. ADM will either send a check to the elevator, which I had originally contracted, or if that's the one. And then, so if your goal is to just make it on the trucking because you're headed that way, there's no reason you can't do that yet.
You just have to go through whatever.
Right. And so if that happens, there's truckers out there every day. So to say somebody's not going to be able to, pick up what the goal on trucking is to be loaded both ways.
But
then that's so.
You're correct, but you're taking the easy button away, and it's no different than. So we have our own trucks. We haul all our own grain, but I still go through a grain elevator. And now I could make a cent or two more, whatever, if I didn't. But my grain elevator, if I have to have something happens to me, or I have three guys that something happens to them, something catastrophic happens to my farm, that all of a sudden we can't haul it, I can call the grain elevator and they'll haul it for me.
Right.
Or if I sell it direct, yeah, you're right. I can try to find some truckers, but it's sure not as easy as the easy button if I'm just going to call the elevator and have it hauled.
Or like I have the guy I've been selling it through. he hires some truckers to come down.
Sure. You know.
I mean, so there's still, I mean, to say, oh, they aren't going to be able to haul grain stuff. It's like,
Yeah.
come on now.
Well,
Because I had to tell one gentleman that tried to, I'd say, pull the wool over my eyes, or what do you want to say? I had to say, you do realize I have worked at grain elevators, and I was in agronomy, but in the fall, everybody's in the grain bit, and so it was like, you don't understand. It's like, well, you better stop right now, sir, because
So how often will an unqualified audit be required?
yearly.
$20,000 expense, 20 to 30 potentially. Year.
I've been told it's less. So
you know what? I just thought of a new business. I'm always starting up new businesses, it seems like. So I just thought of another one because I'm an unqualified CPA because I'm not a CPA at all. So I will do your unqualified audit,
No.
10 grand.
But you're also already having a CPA do your audits and stuff. So that's already
right.
part of the cost.
That's right. Yeah.
So it's just more of a stepped up, we're going to say,
Sure.
and so.
So like, we have to leave a lot of money, cash sitting in an account to satisfy this bond or to satisfy that equity position. Will that not be required anymore to hold that cash there?
And bond won't be.
It's
So
gone.
basically, if you've got, I think it's enough, my understanding, like I said, I'm over my skis right now, but you have to have assets to cover it. So,
Yeah.
I mean, because you could either, I think, go bond or cash, one of the
I
two.
mean, that's costing,
Yeah.
8% or something, whatever it is to have that money tied up. So
Because I do know if we looked at, because I talked with the bonding companies, because, basically, eliminating the Grain Indemnity Fund and going strictly to a bonding situation, and then tying that to, the larger, when you say the elevator, the bigger the bond they'd have to have. When we started looking at those numbers, there was no cost savings there whatsoever that I could see when I was, trying to, okay, is that a cheaper route or easier route? But
So we're
when I looked at it, that looked like a whole lot more cumbersome and trouble than what we have. So
I know from working with you in the house and stuff, Norlin, that you went through this meticulously. Did any of this come up beforehand? Did you think this was going to be a problem beforehand, or it just kind of snuck up and?
well, I've been very open. Like I said, I'm positive I said it here. I said it to the corn growers anytime. And I would inform somebody the other day that they need to listen to my comments on the floor of the Iowa House, because I'm fairly positive one of the highlights I said was the unqualified audit, that everybody would be on the same page. And that was basically our check against.
So I think I can safely say, being on the same page, though. I used to raise pigs, and back then a guy by the name of Wendell Murphy was raising pigs out in the Carolinas. Became Tyson's. He sold out to Tyson's. They always said you had to get more efficient. Well, I'm 100% sure I could raise pigs as cheap as Wendell Murphy. The difference was, and I was raising them outside. The difference was I was raising 4,500 pigs a year, and he was raising 45 million. So if you're going to do it for $1 a hog, it wasn't worth it for me at $4,500. I can go do something else, but he was still making 45 million. So if you're the great big elevator around, or the big co-op, or whatever you are around, this doesn't really affect you, but it does really affect the small guy that.
Well, it does affect them. It sends more business their way. It protects them.
Well,
Yeah.
and like I said, we've got to tweak, and that's why I'm kind of glad with that year. I mean, because we can be in session in
I think that's
January.
the part that nobody understands. Is
And-
they have a year here.
that they basically in that transition period where you can tweak it. So that's why I would ask everybody to take a breath.
Yeah.
And let's take a look at it. Like I said, our goal, and I've been very clear, my goal, like I said, I've came from an adamant no on including any credit sales whatsoever in the indemnity fund. And so my concern has always been, how do I protect that fund? Because let's just say, I don't remember the exact number, the assessments are going to quit here, or if they haven't already, 1st of August, I think. And it's going to be not quite 16 million. That's somewhere, I think, between 14 and 60. The Iowa farmer has put basically 14 plus million into account, when corn this fall possibly could be under $4.
Right.
And so, the farmer has basically put money in, backing it up. So I think I owe it to them to make sure I'm protecting it.
So you mentioned the tweak. There's a year to make some tweaks here.
I think we have time because, like I said, if the state gives those guys time, because there's a limited amount of people that can do an unqualified audit, and how do they get lined up and scheduled?
Norlin, what's that process look like to make these suggestions? How does the normal Iowan, if they have suggestions to make to this, who do they do that to?
Well, they can contact me. Like I said, I'll probably be one of the lead on making those changes.
Is IDEL's is there any other agency that's taking these?
They would be taking comments, and I'll contact contact them. Like I said, I believe we have time to, especially with the transition period.
Well, I think the big takeaway is if you're a smaller elevator, don't jump the gun and just say, I'm giving it up. Look into what the real rules are and how much time you have and what could be tweaked to make it different. That maybe we
like I
could
said,
be
because
doing.
like I said, I think if we get a year possibly before that year transition period up, we could make adjustments to it.
Sure.
I mean, that's and like I said, I was asked, I made the commitment. I would definitely, like I said, I don't want to see anybody put out because of it. But like I said, my first goal is protect the fund. I'll be
Right.
like I said, because
I understand.
like I said, if anything, like I said, I tell people, you got to remember, I compromise, I moved.
Yep.
So, but for that movement, well, I want to make sure it's there in case I hope I never have to go through that, but I know people have gone through that, and just the time frame between they get paid out is stressful enough. And then maybe not knowing that you're not going to get it,
Sure.
it would be more stressful. So like I said, that's my position.
I've got kind of a tough question, if you don't mind. And what's your response to the people that think that this was just bad policy for the sake of creating policy?
Well, first of all, I take it as an insult.
Sure.
Because and especially if you would talk to my wife, because she's tired of hearing about Grain Indemnity Fund. Just the amount of time that I have spent talking to people and going places and trying to, in my mind, do the best thing and the right thing. And if anybody thinks that I've been told I've been bought out by people and this, it's like, not that I know, but
I can kind of see where they're coming from. The system had worked before. We haven't had a failure in it. And we changed the policy and made new policy for a system that hadn't really had a problem. And I guess that's kind of the angle I'd like to give you an opportunity to.
Well, basically what it stems from is a large ag organization came and said, we'd like changes.
Yep. And that was Farm Bureau. I mean, I don't think that's any secrets, right?
That's no secret, but and so, I mean, it'd be no different than the people that the small elevators, I'm going to take them now. If they come and want changes, just like I would listen to them and
Sure.
That's how legislation works. People come with an idea, and on the flip side of that coin is the fund was really, really, really low. Okay.
Well, coin got so high that I think
and then it had never been filled. So if there was a time that we were going to change it, in my mind, that's when to do it.
Sure.
Versus it was now being, let's say now it goes to 14 million. And all of a sudden we add more strings and do this and that on who could get paid out. Well, some of those funds never paid into that. Or, what I'm trying to say, people will be getting coverage for something they never contributed to. Whereas, it was way down now, because up until this last assessment, I mean, there'd been 30 years, 25 years, no one had paid in. Okay. So there was, I don't think it's, I don't. I just know how much time, how many conversations I've had, how many, and like I said, I even went back and looked through my text messages and stuff because, in some conversations like, that's not how I remember the timeline. And then when I got done, I go, no, I must stand by my timeline because here's this and that. No. So that's, I mean, like I said, anybody has a suggestion, write it down, because if you just up front, you're going to call them bitch, don't call me. But if you've got a suggestion, what you
How
think
to
can
make
be
it better.
done, I will listen all day long.
Sure.
But
Well, I'm going to switch topics. on
Okay,
this
go ahead.
because you gave us a good rundown on that. And I have a complaint. And since you're here, you can set me
Is it a
straight.
bitch or is it a?
Well, it might be. So I fell on the side of, I understand that corn runs Iowa, whether you like it or not. Corn is king in Iowa, has been for all my life, as far as I can remember. At the same token, I'm a firm believer in private property rights. And so I know on the phone the other day, I actually stopped our conversation. I said, we got to do this on a podcast, not on a personal phone call. But I thought, boy, Norlin, you missed the boat on not voting for that. And I think the governor should have voted for it. And I was looking at it, I'll admit, with a few blinders on probably. I seen it as a bill for one person and his company, the veto as being for one person and one company, and maybe didn't see the fullness of what you got talking to me about. So let's talk about private property rights. Why you feel the governor shouldn't, or maybe I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you're all right with the governor not signing it, I believe.
Yep, I am.
Why I was not all right with it. And so let's just take off from there on why you fully support her vetoing it and your belief that it wasn't what I believe a bill for one person.
Well, first off, the governor did a very good job explaining her reasons. And if anybody would like to, they can get on, I believe, the legislative website and then look up, how was it, House File
You got to like people that come on a podcast that bring a fistful of paper.
639.
Yep.
And if you print that off, it'll also print off the governor's reasons for vetoing it. And she does a very good job. And like I said, I would just ask people to read it. And kind of one of the, and I know, we can talk about it being a summit bill or not, but it goes too far to begin with. First off, when there's a pipeline coming into it by Omaha, the tall grass pipeline or something like that,
Okay.
prairie grass pipeline, I don't recall the name, but it underneath the Missouri River to an ethanol plant over in that area, all voluntary easements. The bill that was passed affects them.
Even though it was voluntary easements.
Yep.
How does it affect them?
Because it raises the insurance requirements, and that the 25-year, basically you can only use it 25 years, and you basically that affects them, and those people all signed up for it. And in a similar fashion, because I know I'm going to pick on my Clinton County supervisors, when Wolf was still, it would have affected it. Okay, this is kind of it would have, but it doesn't. What I'm trying to say.
And this would have not just carbon, right? This would have affected.
This would have affected other ones.
Yes, sir.
But in the carbon pipeline that was coming from Wolf through Illinois.
Wolf is owned by ADM.
No, they're not. They're a Canadian company.
Okay, but they're ADM affiliated.
Right. They were
only doing ADM plants.
but with the capacity to hook other people up. People don't know that there was extra capacity in those pipelines. And I had a conversation with what I found to be, or when I was searching for an expert on carbon pipelines.
Yep.
And the first thing out of his mouth was, you do realize that the ethanol plants are the low hanging fruit.
Oh yeah.
He goes, if this philosophy continues, anybody with a foundry or anything of that nature would also be hooking in. So you take John Deere down in Davenport or Arconic or Alcoa would need a place to hook in to reduce their carbon footprint. But getting back to in Clinton County, where Wolf in our area, they're saying they were going to do strictly voluntary. They would not use eminent domain was their selling point. They've since pulled back asking for a permit. But in Clinton County, the 9 miles in Clinton County, everybody had agreed to it. So what about the property rights of those people?
Sure. So that's why
I mean, so that's where it went too far. I mean, in regards to that. And then plus, if you read the bill, and like I said, I listened to the comments that some of my colleagues made, and I really began to question my vote. And I'm like, what did I miss? Because I didn't read it that way. And so I printed it off.
Sure.
And then I went through it, and there's a part, a lot of it deals with making sure Iowa Utility Board members are at the hearings, or that somebody is present there. Okay, how does that directly affect my property rights?
And if they don't want to support it, what, they just don't show up then?
Well, there's some, but then I talked to one of the board members, and some of the meetings basically are kind of lower level meetings.
But by having that in there, wouldn't that give them kind of the right, but not the obligation to show up to these, to move something forward? If they wanted to roadblock it, they could just not.
Well, but they still have to vote.
No,
people was
back in Des Moines.
they basically just have to be there. They can't just. But that it basically directly the property rights, and then there's a whole bunch of area in here when it deals with the interveners. Protecting the interveners. So people that intervene on the behalf of the landowner, basically giving them immunity to basically their actions. So what?
So to bring that into, maybe I'm off base here, but let's bring that into the peaceful riots.
Right. No, but no, you're
So, so in other words, a landowner couldn't pay a bunch of people to come in and throw rocks and stuff at the pipeline people. Is that what you're kind of?
Well, basically, people coming to the meetings, and basically there was a concern. There was some transaction made that certain people could be technically liable for the legal expenses of the other party due to their acts, just stuff like that.
The
But
interveners
could be
liable
for
this bill. Got rid of that liability.
Got it. Yeah, you.
I was not aware of that.
So their part's in there. So, but actually, I'm a landowner. What did that do for my property rights?
Mm-hmm.
And then I kept reading. Okay, so let's say Summit.
Yep.
And there was a part in there on insurance. Basically, they insinuated that when the pipeline comes through your land, you won't be able to get any insurance. Well, I contacted my farm insurance company, a large,
we got it.
a large one in Iowa, and I know a senator contacted theirs, was a different company, and inquired about if the carbon pipeline comes through, what's that going to do to my insurance rates? Are you going to rate me? Are you going to do this, that? And they go, doesn't matter to us whatsoever.
One thing it does do though, is it does limit you on where you can build,
That's correct.
Close you. I mean, it's more than just that pipe. I think was 6 inches. Is that right? 6 inches.
I don't know.
It's a small pipe.
Right.
But it's also under extremely high pressure.
Right.
So it does limit your farming ability as far as what you would build there or something. Far more than just where the pipe is.
But that's part of the negotiated.
That's part of the negotiation. That's
I understand that.
and that's
I
what
understand that.
But right now, are there any other pipelines that, this exists where you can't get insurance property?
Like I said, I couldn't talk. I mean, and I believe, at least the way I understand it, the Iowa Utility Board requires them to have so much insurance or for putting it in.
Sure.
But then once it's in operation, basically that's, like any business would have insurance to cover their asset or losses. But there's nothing let's just say Summit, since we've been using it, they decide, in 25 years, the pipeline will be crap, so we don't care. We agree with that. And then, okay, so if, so they basically said, we can live with this. So they put it in. Now tell me what the landowner got. Show me what the landowner got. They just came through, didn't put the ground back. I got a 10-foot hole where it settled. And what did this bill do for me? And people are going to come to certain, I'm going to say my colleagues, and go, you passed a bill for property rights.
That gave you no property rights.
That gave me no property rights. And I'm going to be up front and say, guess who's going to be able to stand there and go, I told you so.
Norlin Mommsen.
Because I told you so. Because 3 years ago, I put together what I call the Landowner Bill of Rights. Okay. I sat down as a landowner and worked through the process. And Okay, how dealing with the land, with the pipeline company. Something as simple as, if they send somebody that we clash. There's people you just don't get along with.
Right. That's why we have you back. It's just
But
kidding.
in that case, if you're, I'm gonna stereotype here, a widowed lady at home all by herself, and somebody comes in, and these pipeline people, they deal with this every day.
And that's who they pray at first.
Right. And so that person or whoever it is, or if say it's my wife and you're not going to bully her, she should be able to say, get your vehicle out of my yard and send somebody else because I'm not dealing with you. And there should be a place where she can report that or something like that. So the process, so try and give the landowner some power in the process, or feel like they have some power in the process. And then go through, and then I went through, okay, it's coming through, you put the ground back. And then one of the
Keep
things,
the dirt separate.
and one of the things I hear constantly is from the pipeline company, after 3 to 5 years, the yield differential disappears, so it's a non-issue. Well, then put your money where your mouth is, and then you will cover any yield difference for the rest.
Right.
Nobody wants to do that.
Well,
They
but
will.
if you're going to stand there and tell me that it disappears, then stand behind your statement.
So with this proposed landowner bill of rights, there's some language in there that's going to get, that kind of guarantees that or requires that.
Yep, would say, okay. And like I said, it didn't get taken up.
Yep.
But, and the bill that Bushlow had trying to amend it in the Senate had some of my ideas in it.
Which
So-
sounds like that was pretty close to working, or am I wrong? I mean, I know there was a lot of talk of the Boost Law Amendment.
I mean, and I think because I had shared my amendment with him earlier, and then that he had told me I was really going to like his amendment. So I'm kind of jumping here that he kind of copied some of it.
So when Senator Zumbo was talking about the landowner bill of rights, was he talking about yours?
Well, no,
His, or
no,
that's a different one altogether. Yeah.
Bushlow's, but I think
Okay.
Bushlow used some of my ideas out of my amendment. Like I said,
How
sure.
close were we, you think, to the Boost Law thing working? Do you think we weren't close at all, or?
I think that would have been. I liked it because he made. Well, I'm gonna say if he used mine, I'm not. He made it much better. He went much further, did a much thorougher job because he deals with electrical generation also. Because you get down in my area, Clinton and Jackson County, they don't care about a pipeline. But then wind turbines are a big deal. He dealt with those issues with those wind turbines and solar also. So he did a much broader look, and I think at the end of the day would have given at least the landowner a better footing. I mean, to me, the present process, because the process, if you have a pipeline coming through, they can't say anything to anybody until they have that public hearing. So, they send a certified letter to everybody, tell them, be here at this
You're in a
location.
certain area.
And that's the first you ever hear about it. Whereas like some of the wind turbines or even solar issues, I know there was one in an area that people were concerned about. A large majority of that was signed up before anybody knew about it.
And like the Boost Law thing was going to allow you to go so far outside of this territory too, or?
He also allowed, which I think is a key to it, one of the things, especially with a pipeline, once you have that public hearing on your path, you've got to stay within those guidelines. And if you try to, let's say Louis got all the land in an area and blocks it, and they're trying to go around, they can't just go, okay, we're going to tweak it here. They got to start the whole process over. And the Bush Law Amendment allowed that. Basically, okay, we've got a section here that we need to, that these people over here will let us go in, and then we can, honor, leave somebody alone. And that was in there. And I think that was extremely important because, people want to, let it be voluntary. Don't let it be voluntary. You don't want eminent domain, then allow them to move around to make it all voluntary.
Well, I remember hearing a lot about that amendment, but I never really got the backstory on why it didn't survive, I guess. Was it in caucus or?
I'm not in the Senate.
Right.
They were basically at the end of the day, the Senate passed the bill that the House passed.
Sure.
And then, basically, and didn't allow any changes whatsoever. And that would have been a change. Then would have had to come back to the House. And then if the House people would have dug their feet in and go, we demand ours, and got nothing. I mean, so it's, like politics.
So in the best interest of Iowans, because this isn't going to go away, and I have been educated by listening to you, but I'm still very much of a private property. I mean, that's my farm. Nobody from Sun's ever paid my property taxes. Nobody's come out here and paid the interest. Nobody's done any of that. It's mine. I don't think that a private individual company should have that right. But I don't also think that, well, I think two things. One, I think everybody has a price. At some point, I'd let them through, I think. Well, it depends what it is and where it's actually going. I'll admit, I was kind of interested in windmills till I seen the mess that guy over Mechanicsville has, and I wouldn't let you put a windmill on my farm I just don't want anything to do with them. And if you think about putting one up, you should get in touch with that fellow.
Oh no, I've heard
that's a mess.
It is.
But do you think that there's any chance that this isn't something that's going to get fixed in a month? Is there any chance that during the off session time here that there'll be a coalition of senators and House people and the governor's office to maybe try to come up with a bill that encompasses everything you said and limits the eminent domain part?
I hope so. Anybody that'll listen, I've been talking to that and saying that needs to happen. Put the people on both sides. I've offered, since I have been always a no.
Yep.
I've offered to say I will volunteer my services to sit down and because I don't I bought the Century family Century Farm and everything too. I want to protect that.
So you could be a yes with changes.
With changes, yeah. I mean, like I said, if the Bush Law Amendment would have come across, I'd have been the biggest advocate for that you'd ever see.
Do you think, I'm a believer that this could affect the upcoming elections. This single topic could be a deal killer for, of course, the governor's not running again, but I've never been a person that's ever voted for one poor person or not voted for a person over one issue, because there's, you deal with a lot of things, and of course, but there's people that, I don't like what you did for this one thing and I'll never vote for you. So what do you think? Just give me a scale on 1 to 10, 10 being, yeah, we're going to meet. Do you think it's a 5? Do you think it's a 4? Or do you think that a coalition could actually come together and put together a bill that could move forward that kind of got the best of both worlds?
Well, right now, I'm not real certain that a coalition will come together.
Okay.
It needs somebody higher up than me
Right.
to pull people together. And that's why, it's easy to say you need to do this, but
The governor's going to want to have to do that if it's going to happen.
well, that's my opinion.
More or less. Well, I understand.
Because my concern is like, this isn't going to go away.
I agree.
This is not going to go away. And just look at the chaos that went on in the Senate at the end there. In talking with any senators, I haven't found the one that enjoyed it yet.
I believe that.
And with this hanging out there, will this kind of I'm going to say chaos, because it's be the whole session.
Well, special session was brought up too. Is that off the table right now?
That was never going to happen.
That was never going to happen. That was all, in my opinion, politics.
Okay.
Because you would have had to have a 33, 30.
You had it in the House.
We had it in the
but
House.
You're never going to get the Senate.
You would be just by the vote in that, was it 27, 23 or?
And then, I'm going to jump back to this. If you did put together this bill that had the best of both worlds, I think it'd be fascinating how many people. So right now you had 12, I believe, Republican senators, and the rest were Democrats.
Yep.
That voted this through the Senate. How many of those Democrats will hang with a modification, best of both worlds, and be for it, and how many won't? And does that prove that their overwhelming support of rural Iowa farmers and their private property rights, how many people really believed in the private property rights, and how much, what money talks and bullshit walks? Is that kind of the saying I'm looking for?
How much it was posturing?
How much was just posturing to get the disagreement and the problems to try to bolster their hopes of the next election with the one issue voter out there. I'm being pretty difficult, pretty honest here about it, but
I'm going to plead the fifth on that because that's a no-win.
It is a no-win question for
And,
you. But I'm a firm believer that their concern was more about the party's future in politics than it ever was about rural issues. Because you can take some of these senators' voting records on rural issues. They've never voted to help support an Iowa farmer in their life.
Oh, that's an important lesson, you know, for the listeners to hear is, you know, this is partly how politics works. It's not necessarily about the issue. It's about how you position yourself.
True. Which is what our podcast is about. Part of it is to teach people politics.
I would really like to see, because, you know, like I said, if I was king for a day.
Yep.
And I would really like to pull a group together. So on the first day of session or the second day, whatever, a bill gets read in to both the House and the Senate, a companion bill that basically, you know, kind of the groups, I don't love it, but I can live with it because then, you know, you've threaded the needle.
Right.
And, you know, address the property rights plus addressed, you know, because,
well, they're both important.
And because, you know, we just like, kind of, I'm going to go back to my home counties, Clinton and Jackson County. There's I think, 83 people signed up for wind turbines. And there's a big push in the counties to basically try and not have them whatsoever. Well, what about those 83 people's property rights?
Well,
so so that's why, and Louis will find. I mean, and I'm going to go back to Grain Indemnity Fund.
Yeah.
I mean, because I had to tell people multiple times, if I was home with my seed corn cap on, my opinion, would I want deferred payments covered? You're damn right.
You bet.
Would I want 100% of my credit sales covered? You're damn right I would, because that's, you know, in my best interest in that role.
You could have your cake and eat it too. Why not?
But like I said, when I put that darn suit on,
well, you know,
I got it.
Men in blue jeans built this country, and suits destroyed it.
But I try to separate as much as I can. You know, our farm roots and my background will always be a part of any decision I make. But then you got to pull back and go, okay, what's best for Iowa? What's best? Because how do you thread that needle? Right. I mean, and that's the tough part. And then at least I hope when I'm done and at the legislature, I'm known for having been able to, you know, sometimes what was really good for Norlin Mommsen, the farmer in farming back in Miles, Iowa, he kind of screwed himself a little bit, you know, because, but that, you know, that's politics. And like I said, I believe the legislature as a whole has that same attitude, but we need to skim to sit down and basically stop the, right now it's two groups in a corner, you know,
right.
So-and-so in the left corner in the red trunks versus so-and-so over here in the blue trunk. Well,
that's what it is.
And we got to get away from that and basically sit around the table and have a discussion. Okay. And go, what's the most important to you? And you know, because both sides have important issues they need to be discussed. And how do we get there?
Well, that's something that hasn't been brought up yet, but I've been thinking about the whole time as I've been talking about these topics is there's just so much emotion involved in this. And when you talk about the blues and the reds, and it just seems like the fire, the flames just continue to fan the flames with this emotion.
I mean, I had some real good friends extremely upset at me for my no vote. I mean, they're, well, what on earth are you doing?
I wasn't. I mean, I never get too extremely upset over anybody's vote because there's usually a reason for it. And I know on the phone you were talking about it with me, and you pointed out these things, and you got legitimate reasons that you voted no. No, I have legitimate reasons that if I was there, would I have been on the other side? I don't know, because I didn't understand all your reasons until I talked to you. That influenced maybe where I was coming from. I still think that there needs to be a combination of these two put together, because I don't believe that anyone, regardless of how wealthy they are, should be able to come in here and have their company just be able to go through my farm. And maybe that's small-minded of me not to be able to get that part out of my thinking, but I do hope that maybe the governor will listen to our podcast and maybe through some other people say, you know, maybe I should try to put something together.
Well-
I think that'd be beneficial for Iowa. I think it'd be beneficial for her and just to have a leaving legacy that she did something that actually
and,
did that. I think that really would be grateful. I don't mean to cut our time, but our podcasts are limited to a time that we think people will listen, and we're well over that, but I'm sure they stayed involved in this one. But I want to thank you for coming out. I'm hoping that you'll come out again. And I want to thank our listeners that come and listen to our podcast and sometimes be able to watch it. We've had a lot of technical difficulties. I think the vocals are good. Maybe the pictures aren't so good this time, but we're going to work through this and we're going to get our studio up to running and be super great in the future. And I want to thank the staff behind the cameras for putting up with it and making it all work as best they can. And rush on back for another episode. Thank you.